When did Enzo started to be a celebrity?
This is a good point. When did Enzo Ferrari became Enzo Ferrari? Enzo Ferrari was very much respected already in the 1930s.
Is there any message behind this red color?
What makes red iconic is that when sponsors come to Formula One in the late 60s and certainly in the 70s.
What do you feel when you see this design, this car? It was not only to build cars, he wanted to build something else. What was that?
For Enzo, when he was alive, the racing car was always the most important one.
Why did you write that book?
One day, one morning, in the summer of 1985, my brother and I took the train from our hometown in Cremona to go see Enzo Ferrari live. And I always felt that even though they were all very good books, there was something missing. There were...
Hello everyone. Today we're with Luca Dal Monte. Luca, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you for having me.
So what brings you here to Mexico, to our country?
The launch of the Spanish language edition of my Enzo Ferrari biography, which in Spanish is called Enzo Ferrari, la vida grande.
When was this written?
It took me like 5 years to write it and 8 years to research it. It was originally published in Italy with the title Ferrari Rex by Giorgio Editore and Giunti. Gabriel Castro Editores is publishing now the Spanish language edition.
Why did you write that book? You were close to Enzo Ferrari during his life?
I did work for Ferrari, but much later. One day, one morning, in the summer of 1985, my brother and I took the train from our hometown in Cremona to go see Enzo Ferrari live. We knew that every morning he was going to the barber to get his shave. And so one morning we went and we saw him, but he was a very towering figure. So we smiled at him, he smiled at us. He knew exactly why we were there, but we were actually afraid to talk to him. But the reason why I wrote this book is that we came of age, started watching the first Formula One Grand Prix in the mid-70s. Enzo Ferrari was very much alive and very much present. He was on newspapers and magazines every day and every week. He would be on television. He would argue with journalists, via telephone, where they were doing the first talk shows on cars. I grew interested in this personality and absolutely fascinated. And I always felt that even though they were all very good books, there was something missing. There were...
What was missing there?
There was missing all the personal stuff.
It was all professional stuff, but not the personal stuff.
But even the professional,
When did Enzo started to be a celebrity?
This is a good point, because my question to all those that I interviewed, including his son, is when did Enzo Ferrari became Enzo Ferrari? Enzo Ferrari was very much respected already in the 1930s as a racing team owner and leader.
Respected and also blamed for some accidents,
no,
right?
of course, but the government, the fascist government, was actually against him because...
Mussolini or who?
Yeah, Mussolini didn't really care much about. At one point there is this big issue in Italy in the 30s because Auto Union and Mercedes in Germany were subsidized by the state. And so in Italians, the state didn't want to give money to Alfa Romeo, but somehow the state thought that if Alfa Romeo raced directly and not through Scudería Ferrari, they would do better, which actually was wrong. But by 1938, Scudería Ferrari closes and Enzo moves to Alfa Corse. So, but by then he was already a celebrity. Then when does he become an icon? It's certainly sometimes in the 50s.
Okay.
In the 50s, it is when actors and actresses, Ingrid Bergman and William Holden, or the King of Belgium or the King of Holland start becoming repetitive clients. They bought one car after the other. They come to Maranello. If you were, William Holden or Cary Grant, you had to come to Maranello. I wouldn't come to New York.
Even the Pope was trying to reach, but there was something happened. He was sick, right?
Pope visited in June of 1988. Enzo tried to make it for the visit, but he was way too frail. He would die 2.5 months later. That morning he tried to get up, but he couldn't get out of bed. And so they spoke via telephone.
Is there any message behind this red color?
In the old days, at the beginning of the 20th century, the International Federation of Automobiles assigned colors to nations. And each nation, if you were Italian, you had to paint your cars in red. If you were British, it was going to be green. If you were German, it was white. If it was French, it was blue. So the reason why Ferrari were red is because it was mandatory for an Italian car to be painted in red. What makes red iconic is that when sponsors come to Formula One in the late 60s and certainly in the 70s, and all the teams start painting their cars in the color of the sponsor, Enzo keeps red. And so the reason why Ferrari is still red today is because everybody wants to go on in the tradition. But very simply, red is the color that was assigned to motor cars made by Italian manufacturers.
What do you feel when you see this design, this car?
Well, this is the Enzo.
Yes.
The 2002. I have a great memories of this car because I was actually at Ferrari when we launched it. We presented this car. Mr. Montezemolo said we were going to do 349, and then the requests were so many that he actually increased the production to 399. But it was a wonderful car.
I have some quotes from Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
The racing car is like a sun. They represent the continuation of ourselves.
Whenever Enzo talks about his son, it means that it's something it's a topic that he has very close to his heart. Because, he had two sons, Piero's the second born, who's actually today the vice president of the company, and Dino. Dino was the firstborn, and he died.
And there was also some cars named Dino, right?
Of course, after the engine that Dino had helped design while he was alive.
It was not only to build cars, he wanted to build something else. What was that?
For Enzo, when he was alive, the racing car was always the most important one. Ferrari, even today, is actually two companies together. There's the Gestione Industriale, the road-going cars, and the Gestione Sportiva, which is the racing department. The racing cars were always the most important.
Was his soul?
Absolutely, because if you think about when in 1969 he signs a deal with Fiat, he sells 50% of his company to Fiat.
At the beginning, they have trouble with Fiat. They were their biggest enemies. So how come did they get together?
After World War II, World War I, 1918, Enzo Ferrari goes to Torino, and he actually does a job interview at Fiat. And the job interview doesn't go well, and he's not hired. He doesn't get hired. So for him, having Fiat show interest in his car company 40 years later is almost like a big gratification. Actually, between Ford and Fiat, there is a time when Alfa Romeo and Fiat together tried to sign a deal for the ownership of Ferrari. And this, of course, would have been perfect because you would have, Alfa Romeo, which was, Enzo's first love, he raced.
Because it was his first car, right?
He raced as an Alfa Romeo driver, and with Scudería Ferrari, the racing team in the 1930s, he raced mostly Alfa Romeos. And then, of course, Fiat, the big company that did not want me, now wants to buy me. Then at one point, Alfa Romeo backs down, and so he closes the deal with Fiat.
Io ho sempre pensato che le fabbriche sono fatte prima di uomini, poi di mezzi tecnici e infine di muri. La Ferrari è fatta soprattutto di uomini.
Luca, thank you very much for your time and
Well,
congratulations for
thank
this
you.
book.
Grazie. Gracias.